Hi, I'm Jaynie Morris and welcome to another episode of Soul Sentred, the podcast. This is part 2 of episode 5 with my very special guest, Josh Piterman. And if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, then turn this off immediately, go back to part 1 and catch up, because everything we're about to talk about right now about Josh's new book, Behind the Mask. The foundation is in episode part 1. I got my words mixed up, and you know that I always do that, because what do? We free flow. And so I want you to do that. If you have already listened to part 1, you're in for a very special treat. Josh is going to tell us everything about why Behind the Mask came about his podcast, Behind the Mask, and what the lessons are in his fabulous book. So in introduction of part 2, I'm going to read something from his book. My book includes many of the lessons, learnings and wisdoms I've found while trying to work out who I really am. Some I formulated, others I stumbled across while reading numerous philosophical, spiritual and self-help books over the years. Others are from the various coaches, teachers, gurus, guides, mentors, therapists and philosophers who have helped me grow through the ups and the downs of life and self-discovery. Some have come through my podcast, Behind the Mask. My intention is not only to give you a backstage VIP tour of my musical theatre world, which we had, by the way, in episode 1, but also to provide you with some useful tools to help navigate life, find deeper meaning, explore a growth mindset, and ensure it's all done with a touch of humour. Josh Piterman, thanks for hanging around.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I've been sitting here a whole week. It's like they fed me.
Oh my gosh, you're a funny guy.
Well, I've got to say, like, you listen to the book and it's not till the end that you go with a touch of humour, and there's plenty of comedy within the book because it is really heavy subject matter. The inward journey, like everyone's like, oh, the whole enlightenment journey, I describe it as endarkenment. You got to go down. I think a lot of people are trying to get, what we talked about in episode 1, trying to get high.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like the spiritual thing. And my mentor, Asher Packman, speaks to this. It's like, who wrote a beautiful foreword for the book, by the way. And it's like this thing of like, if I'm trying to get high, It's this up and fast. How quickly can I get that? But really, the work comes in the soul. And this is soul centered. And for me, the soul is slow and down. And when you go down, if you think about like a tree, you're going down into the mud, into the roots, into the dirt, that's where the wisdom is. That's where the lessons are. That's where the subconscious and the unconscious are playing their part. And that's the real work. And it takes a slowing down. And that is sometimes quite dark work because you can't see through all the mud and the shit and the filth and the dirt down there. And that's why I think when we do this work, it requires a really conscious descent. Some people get thrown down there by something that life throws at them.
Yes.
Major grief or some trauma or whatever. And, don't wish that upon anyone, but that's their karmic journey, and that's what sends them down there. But if you want to do the inward work, it's a more conscious journey. And sometimes you go, I just need to, bring out a little, magnifying glass and the tool kit and whatever, make sure I've got my stuff ready to go down there and sift through that mud and dirt. And that's why I call it endarkenment.
It's the contrast of everything in life. And you've made a really good point there, Josh, that I don't know if it's because I'm in my third act and I look and I have a great community of friends who are much younger than myself. But I see a lot of the younger generations now not understand, like, the contrast, thinking that they always have to have, like you mentioned before, they always have to have the high, they have to have the dopamine hit. It's like the first thing in the morning they open up their phones to see how many extra likes they've got on their Instagram accounts and everything, just to make them feel good. And then if they haven't got them, then the contrast of that is what I'm observing on a world scale now, is that it's not. The contrast of that is causing more darkness and more fear and not an embracing of, oh, okay, so if it's like that, what do I need to do in order to bring myself into this next space?
Or
Does that make sense?
how can I be in that?
How can I be that one?
How can I just be in that dark space? Or, as I said, that the soul is slowing down. How can I just move slowly through this?
Yeah.
Why do
Why
I
the
have
rush?
to? Why the rush? Why do I have to rush to that next dopamine hit and whatever? How can I just sit and be and observe and be present in that? And that all requires a slowing down. It probably requires some ritual in your life, and I think ritual is something I speak to in the book. It's grabbing a routine and making it sacred. And the moment you do that, you're slowing it down. I don't care what that is. It could be the way you eat. It could be making your bed. It could be brushing your teeth. Well, there's so many rituals, routines that we have in our day. But do we make it sacred? Do we sit there and eat that food and sort of, like we did back in the day, saying grace? Do we honour how that food got to our plate?
Yeah.
Or are we so consumeristic and so caught up in let's get to the end of this that we're just like gobble, 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 engage, whatever, blah, 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 do it, eat it, move on, next thing. Like, can we just be in whatever it is that we're doing?
That and on that point as well, when I was speaking about younger generations before, I'll refer to my family in this particular example, Josh, is that my younger son and his wife and my two grandchildren, every meal they sit down to, they say grace. It's not a religious thing. It's just gratitude. And what they're attempting to do is instill that gratitude into their children for the food that they have in front of them. There's no phones on, there's no television, there's no nothing. It is in that moment, if anybody wants to talk, and of course the grannies always do, like they're in their speak. If anybody wants to talk, great. If they don't, great. But it's all about just the gratitude of that moment and that food and the nourishment, the physical side of that, the health and the well-being of that. And so, I agree with you. That's something.
It's just moving slowly. It's creating ritual.
Moving slowly.
I talked on the first episode about Michael Castle, who's an Aussie producer, and I've become very close with Michael. I hang out with his family from time to time, had meals with his family, and they do something, they don't say grace and they don't do the gratitude thing, but they sing a song, and the song is, it's a highlight, it's a low light, go. And someone has to give their highlight and low light of the day. And it's just a little,
that.
and you go around the table and everyone does it, and they do it for every meal. Or every dinner.
Gosh.
And I just love that. And
I love that.
It's a very simple way of just bringing presence to the space.
So
and I talk about that in the book, definitely.
Yeah. And so let's really talk about the book.
Sure.
Why did you write this book?
Yeah. I wrote the book because it felt like the end of a chapter in my life. It felt like the end of the pursuing the musical theatre life chapter. And for any high performer or anyone who's trying to become someone in the world, which is, let's face it, majority of the Western world, because that's a part of the hero's journey that we go on. If I look at Joseph Campbell's work, who I sort of base a lot of my life on, who created the hero's journey, he's an American literature professor from mid-20th century, and his work with the hero's journey is what inspired Star Wars and Harry Potter and whatever. But if I split it into three parts, it's, we get a call to an adventure, and whatever that is, and often we resist the call. It's something big beyond the known world into the unknown world. So for me, that was stepping into musical theatre. And upon that journey, we meet our coaches and our mentors and whatever, and we climb and climb and climb and climb. And we may have success, we may not, whatever, but we hit a moment which is like the obstacle. Yeah. And I've had many obstacles in my life, and I share them in the book, whether it was COVID or whether it's stuff with my father or it's stuff with my voice or relationships that have broken down, whatever. There's the obstacles. And in those obstacles, I'm really paraphrasing the hero's journey because it's actually in 21 parts. But that's the sort of endarkment. That's where we go through the shit and the mud, and like a lotus flower, something beautiful is born from it. That's where we get the elixir or that bit of wisdom or whatever that goes, I've got to share this. And I sort of felt like, and it's a death. And I sort of felt like, okay, I've come to the end of my of what I really want to do in my musical theatre career, it's a death of a kind, you know? And the third part of that chapter is probably where you are in your journey too, is I need to share what I've learnt with the world. And life becomes not about what I can get from the world, which is chapter 1. What can I give to the world? Yeah. And that was what this book is about. What did I learn through the undulations, through the highs and lows, through cultivating very deep spiritual practices over a long period of time, and really delving into what it means to be a human, but more importantly, you know, what it means to be a soul in a human costume. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things that I am loving about your book, Josh, is that in each chapter where you've got various subheadings and you're going through all the things that you've been sharing with us, both in part 1 and now, is that at each end of it, you've also got then exercises, things for the readers of the books to actually contemplate, think about, and potentially put into action. How important was it for you to include that in the process of writing this book?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do now is more around coaching, right? So I see, I do what I call holistic high performance coaching. So I mix breath work, meditation, mindset work, some somatic stuff as well. And so what I try and do is blend the spirituality, the science, and the practical. And I don't go into heaps and heaps of science in this book. There's the odd bit here and there because I didn't want to overload, and there's lots of books around that. But I certainly wanted to have the practical in there. Tangible tools, easily accessible tools that people can grab and use at the drop of a hat, right? So whether there's meditations that I put in there, really simple ones, or little breathwork exercises that you can do, or journal entries for self-inquiry, because really what Behind the Mask has become is a platform for self-inquiry and personal growth. And, you know, on a bigger scale, when I work with football teams or with corporates, it's team culture. But the self-inquiry is the first part. It's taking off the mask that might have been rusted on, this persona, this ego, and going, okay, what's really going on behind there? So I just pose questions throughout from chapter to chapter that ask you to turn inward and self-reflect, which when we're just in the human doing of the world out there, we don't turn inward. We don't cultivate the human being, but we're human beings, not human doings. And so we need to spend as much time working in as we do working out. You know, I call it innercise, not just exercise, you know. Yeah.
One of the things that you touch on in the book, and you actually alluded to this in part 1, was striving to be somebody.
Yeah. I think that's...
I'm a big Joe Dispenza.
Love Dispenza. And a lot of the work that I'm
Joe
doing
Dispenza's
now is based on the Heart Math Institute. And that's where Joe sort of did his grounding too. And that is certainly a place where science and spirituality meet the heart math stuff. And so it goes into heart rate variability, which I'm not sure you've talked about on the show, or heart coherence, which we could talk about another time. But it's wonderful mapping and graphs and stuff to show what happens when you breathe in a certain way, when you meditate on certain things like gratitude, kindness, pride, compassion, what actually happens to the heart in that space. And it's incredible, but it basically shows that when we bring a certain breath to our life, and that's one that cultivates a more parasympathetic response, which we talked about in the first episode, so our rest and digest, and you add derivatives of love in your mind, you create a coherence between the heart and the mind. And this helps with, you know, biohacking, longevity, and all sorts of stuff. So I love Dispenza's work.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Dispenza's work. Go back to the question because I got sidetracked on Dispenza. Somebody training.
Somebody.
So this is something that I've taken from probably the biggest impact on my life from a spiritual sense, Ram Dass, who I talked about in the first episode. And Ram Dass was a American Harvard professor of psychology, and he was sort of caught up with Timothy Leary back in the 60s in the big LSD psilocybin movement. and he got his ass fired from Harvard for taking too much LSD and psilocybin, and from giving it to students and doing a lot of work on it. Like, they were really deep into it on the daily, because they found that it was, and there's so much research and stuff into it now, and they found that this was their awakening to something beyond their mind and the physical form, and this is how they got free, which we talked about in the first episode. And he went off and did a whole bunch of spiritual training in India, met his guru Nim Karoli Baba, who he refers to as Maharaji, so I refer to him as Maharaji in the book. And but he talks about this idea of somebody training, that we're all out in the world in the Western world, trying to become somebody. We have to become somebody. And you know what? I agree, we do. We do have to become somebody to realize that it is in the becoming of somebody that we don't need to be somebody, that we're enough without the somebody. But if we never try and become somebody and are just this sort of empty vessel, we'll probably go into some kind of psychosis. We need to develop the ego to transcend the ego.
And that gets back to what we were saying before. It's the same as contrast.
Yeah.
So you need this to be that.
Yeah, totally.
You need this to be that.
To realize that it's not about, that life isn't about your somebodyness. You have to become somebody. You have to see it. You have to witness it. And so there's nothing there to witness. You probably go mad. So when I talk about somebody, transcending somebody training and moving beyond the somebody, which is really moving into the human being, beyond the human doing. The somebodyness is just the human doing of life. I don't want 16 and 15-year-old kids going through high school who have their life ahead of them to read that and go, I'm just going to transcend it all, because you've got nothing to transcend yet.
No.
So,
you haven't experienced anything.
But once you have those experiences and you have those life experiences when you are trying to win in the world, and you realize that that's not actually what is fulfilling you, that, like we talked about in the first episode, it's just another way to get high.
Yes.
Then you start to move into these deeper spaces of the self, where you really work out, who am I really? What do I really stand for? What are my real core values? What are my non-negotiables? What are my belief systems, which are conditioned, versus what's really innate and true and wise within me? That takes a bit of inward work. Then you might get to a point where you go, you know what, who am I beyond all of those things? And that's sort of what I talk about in the book, that I go, a lot of my study is probably around Buddhist and Hindu culture, but every culture that I research has a version of this, and it's where we meet ourselves beyond any sense of form, physical form, or the mind. It's the spaceless, timeless, formless version of ourselves. I describe it in the book from a Hindu perspective as the Atman, but if you were into Kabbalah, which is mystic Judaism, they'd call it the soul.
Yes.
Yes. In Buddhist culture, you'd refer to it as the observer or the witness, the part of ourselves. And if you read Eckhart Tolle stuff, it's all about the witness or the observer.
It's all about that, yeah.
It's the part of ourselves that we meet in pure presence, present moment awareness, that is beyond any of the stuff. Yeah. And I don't think enough people meet themselves there.
In your book, you talk about finding our purpose in our heart story, and you give great insight in that. And just on that, it's almost, Josh, it's almost become like the buzzword. I've got to find my purpose. What's my purpose? Am I living my purpose? Have you found your purpose?
Absolutely. And it's not out there. It's not something you've got to find out there. And I think people get confused. They think purpose is it's like some outside goal or objective or this thing waiting to arrive in their life. It's been sitting in you all along. It lives in the depth of the soul. Yeah. And normally it takes a bit of endarkenment to awaken what it is for you. But purpose for me is not actually about me. Purpose is the positive impact or contribution or service that I can bring towards others, that lift them up in some way. And what I've sort of learnt about purpose is that I thought it was in musical theatre. My purpose was to do musicals. Well, you retire, your purpose might be to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, you retire. And, seeing this, lots of people, suddenly I have no purpose because your purpose was centered around human doing and not human being. So your purpose should be able to transcend many tasks, vehicles, vessels, however we want to, jobs, careers, this, that, the other. And for me, it took me a long time to realize that really my purpose is to help and maybe a bit to heal, but the way that I like to serve it or the way that I like to contribute is by offering people a space to enter into the non-ordinary parts of themselves. And I go, shit, that's what I was doing in musicals all the time. An audience, if I'm telling the story authentically, the audience aren't with their email that they had, that was in their inbox a couple of hours ago. They aren't in the conversations of work that need to happen tomorrow. They aren't in that argument they're having with their partner or their kids or their parents from last week. They're right there present in the moment within the story, and they're entering into a space of feeling. And that for me is the non-ordinary. That's something spiritual, something divine, something heart-centered. So the purpose for me, I said it's in your heart story. It's in all your experiences. That's what your heart story is, all the deeper experiences. And it will be something that comes from you and it's fundamentally not about you. And so, I have it in musicals, but I have it in the podcast. I have it in the book. I have it in this conversation. Everything for me feels purposeful, certainly with my clients and with, it's about them accessing that part of themselves and coming from that place, so.
It's what's behind the mask.
Yeah. It is at the deepest part of ourselves.
At the deepest, at the absolute deepest part.
Cool. Yeah.
Josh, I've absolutely loved having you on with us on Soul Sentred, the podcast. I have so many more questions, and one of those, and I know it's going to be a whole episode, is you did talk about the coaching that you do actually with sporting teams and what have you. I'd really love to dive into that because I think that there'll be a lot of great insights as far as that's concerned as well. But look, congratulations on your book, Behind the Mask.
Thank you.
It's an incredible read. I absolutely love it. And your podcast as well. And all that you're doing is you're serving in the most beautiful, amazing and positive way that you, Josh Piterman, bring to the world. And I'm so grateful for you being on Soul Sentred, the podcast. Now, where can everybody get the book?
You can get it at any bookstore around the country. And if you're international, it's only available on ebook via Amazon. So hop into your local bookstore or jump online and grab it.
So are you going to do an audio version of Behind the Mask? Is that on the cards?
Not at this stage. Not at this stage. It reads like I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
But that's because I know you. So
but even people who don't,
Yeah,
some of the reviews have been like, I felt like there was just this sort of compassionate friend on my shoulder guiding me through this, which was one of the beautiful reviews that I really enjoy because that's how I wanted to write it.
Yeah. Perfect. Very quickly, what's coming up? What's next for Josh Piterman?
What's next is continuing on the coaching front and the workshop front and keynoting and whatnot with all things Behind the Mask. And I love doing that and certainly space for more of it. It's not like my books are full or whatever. This is sort of new for me. So I definitely want to do more of it. I love working with high performers. So whether that's corporate or athletes or anyone who's trying to make a real fist of life in a elite sort of way. And then some performing stuff too. So I have a number of dates with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra coming up, doing one show called An Evening on Broadway, which is just all the best of musical theatre.
Fabulous.
And then another show called Piano Man Live, which we actually did in Adelaide in your hometown earlier in the year, which is a symphonic version of the music of Billy Joel.
Yeah, so, you did. I was in Norway at the time.
You were in Norway, as you do. No way.
I was, no way. Thank you, Josh Piterman. Thank you so much for being our very special guest on Soul Sentred, the podcast. Absolutely love it. And looking forward to having you on another episode in the future.
Thanks
for being with us.
Thanks so much, Jaynie.
And thank you for joining us for part 2 of episode 5 with Josh Piterman. Remember, Behind the Mask. The Behind the Mask podcast is absolutely incredible as well. So make sure that you check that out. And in the meantime, wherever you are in this amazing, beautiful world of ours, I hope you have an absolute fabulous day. Look forward to having your company next time on Soul Sentred, the podcast.